Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Clutter. I'm your host, Margo Staten, a professional organizer specializing in the spot and toss method. If your plan to declutter usually sounds something like this weekend, I'm finally getting my life together. And then the weekend comes around and you're too tired, too busy, maybe a little overwhelmed or a lot overwhelmed, or life just happens. This episode is for you. Because to keep a tidy, organized home, you don't actually need motivation. Instead, you need small, consistent micro habits. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make with decluttering is waiting until we feel ready. We wait for more energy, a free day, the right mood, and a burst of motivation. And meanwhile, the clutter silently keeps building. Because life doesn't stop while we wait to feel motivated to purge our home. The dishes still come, the mail still rolls around, the Amazon packages still show up at your door. And then decluttering becomes this huge emotional event in our minds, which, by the way, most often leads to procrastination. But decluttering begins to feel like something exhausting, something that we have to mentally prepare for, like a project. You know, you put on the hype music, you're waiting for the motivation to come, and you're like, let's do this. But this is why so many of us women keep putting it off. This is also why I'm such a huge believer in micro habits and why I created the spot and toss method. If you've never heard the term micro habits before, they're essentially exactly what they sound like. Tiny actions that are so small and easy that your brain doesn't actually resist doing them. They're not huge projects. You're not spending 6 hours organizing a closet. Like, who has time for that? I'm talking about things that take seconds or at a max, a few minutes. Things like tossing junk mail immediately without letting it pile up in a stack. Hanging up your coat instead of throwing it on that chair that has become storage for all things sweaters and coats. Spot and toss one item, for example, while coffee brews. Cleaning one bathroom shelf instead of the entire bathroom. Putting one thing back before leaving a room. Tiny actions repeated consistently. And honestly, most women underestimate just how powerful those little actions are because they seem too small to matter, too small to actually have an impact. But small habits are exactly what keeps our homes under control because your life is built in these small, repeated things that you do every day, not in one exhausting burst of motivation once a month, once a quarter. Or maybe you're like many people and you make decluttering your home a New Year's resolution. And no, micro decluttering does not mean your house magically becomes spotless overnight. If that's what you want, you do have to invest hours, have as many hands on deck, and essentially go atomic. When you declutter via micro habits in the spot and toss method, it means you stop ignoring the small things long enough for them to turn into giant, overwhelming piles. So micro habits look like this in practice. You know, I'm a huge fan of the coffee brew rule. I mean, I am addicted to coffee. I named my chocolate lab coffee. So I adapted the practice of every morning when I brew my coffee, while the machine is, making its gurgling sounds, I will pop open a cabinet or a drawer and I will spot and toss an item. If I find something that doesn't belong, that I don't love, need or use, I will let it go. When I'm getting dressed in the morning, I've also adapted the habit, which by the way is seamless because I've been doing this for many, many years now. So you don't even notice that you're doing it. So I have a decluttering bin next to my wardrobe. And anytime I pop open a drawer, I'm getting dressed and I encounter an item of like, what was I thinking when I bought this? It happens to the best of us. Instead of putting it back in the dresser or the closet, I throw it in that donation bin. And of course, once the donation bin gets full, I drop it off to the local Salvation Army. Another great example for us ladies is when you're doing your hair or your makeup in the morning. Same concept applies. You encounter, a face product, a hair product, an eyeshadow that you know that you are never going to be wearing or using, right? Sometimes we encounter items and we're like, how did this even get here? Like, When did I buy this? 5 years ago? Again, instead of leaving it there, let it go right away. And this is why I love the spot and toss method so much, because it turns decluttering into something that happens during your actual life, not outside of it. I have been a decluttering coach for years. I have helped thousands of women all over the world and in person in New York declutter their homes. And I can tell you that more often than not, we are not tackling our clutter because it is overwhelming. There's too much of it. We don't know where to start. We begin to procrastinate. When we start, we experience decision fatigue, which leads to decluttering paralysis. And it goes into total shutdown mode. Your brain doesn't like the feeling of overwhelm, so it's going to intentionally procrastinate the thing that it's afraid of, the thing that seems too big, the thing that it thinks that you will not successfully be able to accomplish. And this is why micro habits, starting very small, whether it's just one item or maybe a box or a bag or a handful of items or maybe a pile of clothing in the corner of a room, it's much more effective, and your brain loves it, right? Because when you, let's say, go through, a small box from start to finish, your brain is like, oh my God, project complete. And it wasn't so bad. And it took me 10 minutes. And then it wants to do it again and again and again. And this is where momentum comes in, decluttering paralysis stops, and motivation actually shows up. Decluttering should seamlessly fit into your daily life and your daily routines. It shouldn't take you astronomically outside of how you live and the amount of free time that you have, which is why focusing on a shelf or a handful of products or even the spot and toss method is much more effective than waiting for motivation or waiting for a pocket of time that, quite frankly, oftentimes does not come. So tiny moments matter more than people realize. Now, don't get me wrong. There is absolutely nothing bad about a good reset day. You're like high energy. You got a Sunday. The kids are out of the house. And you're like, I am going to go atomic on my space. I think that there's a time and place for that as well. But again, those moments are far and few in between. And what happens when you think that kind of waiting for that reset day is the only way to declutter, it puts too much pressure on us. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I forgot the last time I had a few extra hours to kill on a weekend or was energized enough after like a 10-hour workday to roll up my sleeves and do a heavy purge. Honestly, most marathon decluttering sessions, even if you can find the time, fail because they are exhausting. Maybe you can relate to this. You pull everything out of your wardrobe. You make giant piles. You get decision fatigue. Your nervous system gets overwhelmed. And halfway through, you're like, I'm done. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with you. This is it's a very normal phenomenon. And it's because your brain is not wired to sustain hours of decision making without burnout. Micro habits work because they respect your energy instead of draining it. So here's what I want you to do this week. Stop waiting for motivation. Instead, pick one tiny decluttering habit you can repeat daily. Not perfectly, not for hours, just consistently. And honestly, this is exactly why I created my new 7-day spot and toss decluttering challenge, because I wanted to help women experience what happens when decluttering becomes small, manageable, and part of real life. Every single day, you will receive an email from me in your inbox with one small area to focus on, a quick 2-minute motivational audio message from me, simple spot and toss action steps, and of course, realistic momentum building tasks. Again, no perfection, no overwhelming projects, no pulling your entire house apart. I've had hundreds of women already start doing this. And what I love, what literally just brings such a huge smile to my face is like, Day 1, you guys will hit reply and you're like, Margo, I decluttered 3 items. Day 2, it's like 17. Day 3, it's like 47. I'm like, whoa. Day 4, day 5, it's like an addiction, right? And again, you can do 10, you can do 20, but you can also just do 1 or 2 items a day. It's entirely up to you, your energy level, and your mental and physical capacity. If you're interested, I will leave a link to it in the show notes. So remember, you don't need motivation. You need habits that are small enough to actually happen, because tiny actions repeated consistently will always change your home more than one exhausting weekend ever will. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck on your decluttering journey, and always remember to be good to yourself.